One of the most feared interviewers in the process is the bar raiser. So in today's video, I'll talk about who the bar raiser is and a couple of tips and tricks, when it comes to what to expect during this bar raiser round. Let's begin with the bar raiser profile and what are their goal in this process. Why are they so different? To my knowledge, they are supposed to ensure that you are at least as good as 50% of existing employees, at least for Amazon. And the profile of a bar raiser is someone who's really fascinated about these things, about interviewing people, about this overall science of interviewing. And you must understand that there's not that many people that enjoy these things in the first place. Now, another important aspect, in my opinion, is to understand that they are, a lot more advanced, they are a lot more knowledgeable than other interviewers in the process, but this is a matter of a learning curve. And in my experience, it's perfectly fine to ramp up your learning curve to such a degree that you're even better than a bar raiser at interviewing. You're even better at reading the room if you want. So in my opinion, all interviewers in the process are smart people, as you would expect, but you should not feel constrained that, hey, the bar raiser is a genius. No, they just know more information than you do, and this is perfectly normal. But to the extent that you learn more about the process, the interviewing process, and about behavioral interviews in general, you can become just as good, if not better, than them. The second thing I want to talk about here is about this element of surprise in behavioral interviews. And I wanted to make it clear that the best interviews contain the unexpected, and it's kind of normal to feel fearful about these things, about the unexpected, about the unknown. This bar raiser round makes no exception, because they are someone who are supposed to be really good at interviewing. And I can give an example. There are people who have entire virtual on-sites nowadays with only surface level discussions, whereas the bar raiser round is the real thing. That's when they dive deep into things, and some of them even save their best stories specifically for the bar raiser round. How can they challenge you? And what are some methods they use to challenge you, and how do they get what they want from you? There are a couple of methods here, and probably the most obvious would be to ask you challenging questions, the failures, these types of questions. Another method to get as much information as possible is to make you feel as comfortable as possible, because when you're comfortable, you have a tendency to give away information more easily. Right, this is actually the best interviewers I know do like this. And expect the unexpected. For example, if you're interviewing with AWS, they might ask you how much money did AWS did last quarter of last year. And if you don't know, that doesn't mean you won't get the job. It just means you have no answer to this question, and you should quickly ramp up your performance and move on, essentially. Right. So also expect these types of questions. Next topic here: who blocks in the bar raiser round? In my opinion, the candidates that are the most likely to block in a bar raiser round are the ones who are overthinking or over-theorizing this preparation process. For example, you have a wall full of stories, and if you feel like you've been too much to the theoretical part, then you're also more likely probably to get stuck. Another very common reason for blocking in a job interview is that you memorize stuff. So if you memorize the answers to the 10 most commonly asked questions and you get as the 11th most commonly asked question, then of course you're going to block, because you will loop first through your 10 questions. You'll find you will have nothing, and then oops, and then that's how you get blocked. Now, when it comes to a couple of examples of bar raisers, I can tell you there are at least two bar raisers who actually left their jobs, and they're actually still practicing something linked to this. One of them is actually selling trainings, and the other one is just publishing videos on YouTube. So I also link them in the video description. And by the way, there's no affiliation, no endorsement going on here. I just know about them. Decision making. So how do who decides on an interview if you're going to get hired? Is it a bar raiser or not? And here I've been warned by an Amazon recruiter that I'm not right about these things. The bar raiser does have a significant decision-making power in a process, but in my opinion, it's the hiring manager who makes the ultimate decision on whether to extend you an offer or not. Now, this being said, they can disqualify you if they don't like you. And I've also heard of instances where the bar raiser liked the candidate so much that they immediately invited them for another interview. And I believe that if the bar raiser likes you a lot, then you're very likely to get more interviews quite easily with, at least for Amazon, I'm speaking here. But yes, they can disqualify, and they are someone special in the process, I can guarantee you. And yes, in my opinion, it's also perfectly possible that they will be the main deciding factors in some cases, right? So this is what I know when it comes to decision making. Another interesting question is, how do you spot the bar raiser during a job interview? The bar raiser interview is almost always the last round of your interview. This is again from multiple sources. I cannot confirm this, but could be true. In my something that's more reliable, in my opinion, that there's someone who are not from your future team. They are someone from a different team, but someone who are knowledgeable of what makes a great candidate for the job that you're applying for. And to give a bit more insight here, I have coached many candidates who were successful in their interview process who actually never spotted or never were even interested of spotting the bar raiser to the process. So that's also a perfectly fine strategy. And last but not least, I know at least 2 people who are Amazon employees who said, then I had 2 bar raisers. So for some super senior roles for which, it's worth the investment, they might even assign 2 bar raisers, or at least that's my information. Last but not least here, what types of questions will a bar raiser ask you during the job interview? And to be fair with you, they have, to my knowledge, they have the luxury to pick what types of questions they will ask you, and those questions might be more special than others. Now, keep this one thing in mind. Behavioral interviews are usually, in order for a behavioral interview to be fair for everyone, it must contain the same questions for everyone. So I believe the bar raiser should make no exception. Now, I'm only talking about the main questions, not the follow-up questions. But these questions would be for everyone. Now, there could be failure stories that I've heard plenty of them, and the failure stories for sure. There could be, subtle differences on. Usually, customer obsession is a very important principle. So you could eventually learn to make a distinction between just customer support or customer obsession, or see what the culture is like at your existing company versus a high-performing company. Or if it's not already a high-performing company, of course. But there are different levels of expectations when it comes to customer obsession. This has also often been a differentiator. What's your most recent invention? That's also a very common bar raiser question for more junior types of roles, for software development engineers, if you want. But all in all, they have the luxury to pick their own questions. And keep in mind, they also keep an eye on the list of the most commonly asked questions as well. So do not, in my opinion, trying to predict what types of questions will get asked is not really something that's going to easily fly in a job interview. Last but not least, there are a couple of strategies that they might apply to ask you these questions. They might ask you one question and dive deeper from there for 1 hour straight if you want, or they might ask you 30 questions in 1 hour. So depending on the role that you're applying for, depending on the expectation that they have from you, and depending how they feel it's best during that interview round, they might have different approaches. Really from experience, I don't feel like it will make a huge difference if you spot the bar raiser or not in a job interview. This is my main conclusion. Just, try to be yourself, try to embrace fear rather than feel fear, than feel fearful of an interviewing process, because after all, it's just a matter of risks. The better you mitigate yourself as a risk in a job interview, the better the chances to have a successful outcome. So hopefully you found this useful.